We are less than 90 seconds away, Kristen, from being able to see and hear from the president on the South Lawn. I want to very quickly bring in somebody who worked in the State Department under President George W. Bush, Ambassador Nick Burns, former Undersecretary of State and former U.S. Ambassador to NATO. So, Ambassador, as I mentioned, we're probably now about a minute away. So I'm going to ask you quickly here. The president now directly linking this favor that he asked of the Ukrainian leader to an investigation of his political rivals. How significant is that to you?
I must say, I think this is corruption. This is corrupt by the president. He's abusing his office. He's using his office and our relationship with Ukraine to go after the strongest rival, and that's former Vice President Joe Biden. No prior American president has done this. It's morally wrong. It's legally wrong, and obviously the House of Representatives has to make this the centerpiece of its impeachment inquiry into the president.
Ambassador Burns, I'm going to ask you to stand by. Kristen Welker, I'm going to ask you to stand by as well, as we're getting close now to that play out of this tape. Again, President Trump getting ready to leave to go to Florida. He's got an event down there talking about Medicare. You can see the president walking out of the residence. We're going to listen in to what he said to reporters just moments ago.
The villages in Ocala, Florida, we have a big crowd. We're going to be talking about health care. We're doing a lot of work on health care. We're very successful at it. And so we're going to be speaking to the great people of Florida. And I think they're very happy with the job we're doing. Yeah. What? Well, if you look at the whistleblower's complaint, it's totally inaccurate because the conversation that I had was absolutely perfect, and most people that have read it say the same thing. The whistleblower never saw the conversation. He got his information, I guess, second or third hand. He wrote something that was total fiction, and now when people see that, they're not happy. Well, we're looking at a lot of different things. China's coming in next week. We're going to have a meeting with them. We'll see. But we're doing very well. Some of the numbers, I think, are being affected by all of the nonsense, all of the politics going on in this country by the Democrats. I call them the do-nothings. They do nothing for this country. They don't care about this country. But the numbers really are looking very good going into the future. So we'll see. I have a lot of options on China. But if they don't do what we want, we have tremendous power.
What exactly did you hope Zelensky would do about the Biden after his phone call? Exactly.
Well, I would think that if they were honest about it, they'd start a major investigation into the Bidens. It's a very simple answer. They should investigate the Bidens, because how does a company that's newly formed, and all these companies, if you look at, and by the way, likewise, China should start an investigation into the Bidens, because what happened in China is just about as bad as what happened with Ukraine. So I would say that President Zelensky, if it were me, I would recommend that they start an investigation into the Bidens, because nobody has any doubt that they weren't crooked. That was a crooked deal, 100%. He had no knowledge of energy, didn't know the first thing about it. All of a sudden, he's getting $50,000 a month, plus a lot of other things. Nobody has any doubt. And they got rid of a prosecutor who was a very tough prosecutor. They got rid of him. Now they're trying to make it the opposite way, but they got rid. So if I were the president, I would certainly recommend that of Ukraine. I haven't, but it's certainly something we can start thinking about, because I'm sure that President Xi does not like being under that kind of scrutiny, where billions of dollars is taken out of his country by a guy that just got kicked out of the Navy. He got kicked out of the Navy. All of a sudden, he's getting billions of dollars. You know what they call that? They call that a payoff. Well, I leave that to the lawyers. I can say, though, that Schiff has now been proven to be a liar. We've known it for 3 years because they've been trying to impeach for 3 years. He's a stone-cold liar. So I leave that to the lawyers. That's up to them to decide. But the whole investigation is crumbling. Yeah.
Can you still work with Congress to get other work done? Can you still
I can. Yeah, I can. I can.
How?
You can't, I can. Well, we have a real problem. We've been hitting the Taliban very, very hard. And as far as I'm concerned, they still haven't recovered from killing 12 people. One happened to be a great American soldier from Puerto Rico. They still have not recovered, and they probably never will. No, but I read Mitch McConnell's statement yesterday, and he read my phone call. And as you know, he put out a statement that said that was the most innocent phone call he's read. And I spoke to him about it, too. He read my phone call with the president of Ukraine, Mitch McConnell. He said, that was the most innocent phone call that I've read. I mean, give me a break. Anybody that reads it says the same thing. And the only people that don't understand it is when they look at the false, fabricated, fraudulent statement made by Shifty Schiff. Well, I think Biden is going down, and I think his whole situation, because now you may very well find that there are many other countries that they scam, just like they scammed China and Ukraine. And basically, who are they really scamming? The USA, and it's not good. And that's probably why China, for so many years, has had a sweetheart deal where China rips off the USA, because they deal like people with Biden, where they give the son $1.5 billion, and that's probably why China has such a sweetheart deal that for so many years they've been ripping off our country. We're looking at it. We're looking at it very closely. It's under study. We'll see. They want to talk, and we'll be talking to them soon. We'll see. So I'm going to, yes?
Why did you recall the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine? Was she a problem? Why did you recall her?
I heard very bad things about her. And I don't know if I recalled her or somebody recalled her, but I heard very, very bad things about her for a long period of time. Not good. Thank you. I'll see you in Florida. I'll see you all in Florida.
President Trump now boarding Marine One. He is now preparing to board Air Force One. He's actually getting on board his plane, as you can see, turning around and waving before taking off for that trip to Florida later this afternoon. And what you just heard from him was significant for several reasons. The president speaking with reporters for just about 7 minutes. One, as a contributor to this network, Sam Stein points out, President Trump is publicly suggesting and calling on foreign governments to investigate a political rival at the same time that on Capitol Hill there's an impeachment investigation into whether President Trump called on a foreign leader to investigate a political rival. President Trump also had what you could call his China if you're listening moment, calling on President Xi to investigate what the president is alleging are misdeeds by Hunter Biden, the former vice president's son, claims that the campaign has called dismantled conspiracy theories and that have been debunked by independent fact checkers. You also had the president continuing to allege unproven claims about the Bidens, about his family. I want to bring in now Kristen Welker at the White House. We're also joined by Ambassador Nick Burns again, the former U.S. ambassador to NATO. So there is a lot to unpack there. And Kristen, let me start with you, because we did hear a couple of things from President Trump that we hadn't heard before from him, specifically this call for China to investigate a political rival, which is starkly reminiscent of what we heard from President Trump during the 2016 campaign against a different foreign government or foreign leader, and that was Russia at the time.
Right. It was his Russia, if you're listening, moment. And I just want to underscore this point, Hallie. He brought up China unprompted, which makes it all the more significant. We know that this is part of the theory that he and his outside attorney, Rudy Giuliani, have been pushing, that there was some wrongdoing with Hunter Biden's business dealings in China. There's never been any evidence of that, but clearly this is something that he's not prepared to let go. Now, did he discuss it? Has he discussed it with President Xi Jinping? He says he has not. But of course, at the core of this impeachment inquiry is what you just mapped out. Did the president pressure another foreign leader to investigate his political rival? Was there a quid pro quo? If not explicit, was it implicit? That is what lawmakers on Capitol Hill, House Democrats, are looking into. So now they have a new avenue that they're undoubtedly going to be scrutinizing. Hallie, what, if any, conversations were had between this administration and Chinese officials about the Bidens? If President Trump didn't have this conversation with President Xi Jinping, did anyone here have those sorts of conversations? So I think those are among the questions that you're going to start to see asked and try to get answered to on Capitol Hill as the investigations continue to ramp up, Hallie.
Kristen, stand by for a second. Ambassador Burns, I want to bring you in on the China piece of this, because here's the context. As President Trump today is standing on the South Lawn calling on Chinese officials to investigate his political rival's family, in just days from now, top Chinese officials will be working with U.S. negotiators on a massive and critically important trade deal, potentially. Given those two things, the president asking for something from China, Chinese negotiators getting ready to work with the U.S. government on a trade deal, how do you think China is hearing right now what President Trump just said?
The Chinese are going to hear this as something that the president deeply wants. Who knows how the Chinese will calculate this in the trade negotiations? China's an authoritarian dictatorship. Let's just reflect on what just happened. The president of the United States is corrupting our democracy. He's calling on one of our great rivals in the world, the Chinese regime, to investigate President Trump's leading Democratic opponent. He's doubling down in Ukraine and do the same thing. He is spreading outright lies about former Vice President Biden and his son Hunter, and he's denigrating Ambassador Masha Yovanovitch, a highly respected American ambassador. I've worked for 5 presidents of both parties. None of them would have come close to doing what Donald Trump did today. This is a danger to our democracy. There are laws that prohibit government officials from trying to bring other governments, foreign governments, into our elections. The president did that in his July 25th phone call with President Zelensky. He did it this morning on the interview that you've just shown on MSNBC. It is wrong to do that. It's legally and morally wrong. And there's a reason why the House has to follow through in this impeachment inquiry. I think the president is a danger to our democracy, to the way we talk to each other, to the way that power is distributed in this country. And I'm very supportive of what the House Democrats are doing. I would hope the Republicans would stand up and recognize the danger that Donald Trump poses to all of us.
It is also striking, Ambassador, that President Trump is explicitly acknowledging, and in some instances, as Kristen pointed out, bringing up unprompted what he wants these other foreign governments to do. This is not a situation where we're relying on unnamed sources or anonymous sources here, as sometimes has to happen. This is the president saying it out loud to everybody.
And you know, it may be that there already have been conversations between people close to Donald Trump and the Chinese government. Why else would the president bring this up unprompted today in that press conference? Maybe he's covering his tracks. Anything is possible with this president. I think that's what we've learned in the past 2 3/4 years since he took the oath of office. And this is a corruption of the way we've always followed the law in this country. For the president to be the chief instigator of corruption is unprecedented in our history. This is way beyond Watergate. This is way beyond Andrew Johnson in 1868. If you think about the previous times in American history when presidents have been called up to be impeached by the House of Representatives, the Senate is going to have to take up its responsibilities as well. And I think Republicans are going to have to face a moment of truth to see this outright corruption from the Oval Office.